Good evening, everybody. Evening. How are we doing this evening? Have we been enjoying the rugby for the last week or so? Fantastic. Oh, well, welcome to Google, welcome to Town Hall, and welcome to the Advertising Association's Last Man Standing. I'm Mark Howe. I'm the Managing Director of Google's agency business, and I'm really delighted and proud to have you all here tonight and for Google to be hosting this advertising event. Now, before I hand over to our hosts for the evening, I would just like to say a few words as to why we work so closely with the Advertising Association, why we're here tonight, why you're here at Google tonight. And one of the reasons is because it's like a marriage. I'm like wedded to the Advertising Association. I sit on the Advertising Council, Advertising Association Council. I sit on the front foot board of the Advertising Association. And it's my wedding anniversary tonight. So where better should I be? Where else should I be on my wedding anniversary than with my other wife, Tim Lefroy? But Tim isn't here this evening, so just yet. He's left me. It's a divorce already. After 21 years of blissful marriage, which is what I've done with my wife. Hard to believe that I could be married for 21 years. One so young and timid. But it's true. It's true. Anyway, as I say, I've got the great honour of sitting on the Ad Association's boards. But actually, I want to say a few words about what the Advertising Association stands for, because a lot of you guys in the industry won't necessarily really appreciate quite what the Ad Association does for the industry at large. A lot of it does, what it does is under the radar. It's the only industry body that represents the tripartite of advertising, both media owners, advertisers, and agencies, and I'm sure we have some from all of you this evening. And the beauty of the Ad Association is it voices, the industry's collective power and influence to both government, governing bodies, industry bodies, but also corrals that tripartite into trying to speak with one voice. And that is an amazing job, and the team at the AA do a phenomenal job in doing that. The AA promotes our industry in a way that is really positive, a real positive contribution to the economy that we know advertising has. And the AA does that in a fantastic way, both to government, to ministers, and as I said, getting the questions that most people don't want to ask through to government and through to the industry in a way that is fair, sensitive, and actually keeps a check on the whole moral compass of what the advertising in the industry should be. And that's why we're here today. We're here today to keep a check and have a view from four youngish. I've seen some of them, but really, that's the notes are quite a bit wrong there. Rising stars, perhaps, rising stars of our industry, who are going to challenge, and put their vote as to how we could possibly change advertising in the UK. So, if you've not done so already, as soon as I've finished, and before Sam starts the evening, I want you to charge your glasses, get a drink from the bar, and then relax and have some fun. You've got voting tabs with you, so make sure you've got them together. And I really want you to make sure that you give everyone who's talking tonight a really big round of applause and support, because it's not easy standing in front of your peers. It's not easy standing up in front of 140, 150 people. But before I do anything else, I should introduce our host for the evening. Our host for the evening, Sam Delaney. He's published 3 books, 2 of which focus on advertising. In 2007, it's Get Smashed, The Men Who Made the Ads That Changed Our Lives. And this year's Mad Men and Bad Men, What Happened When British Politics Met Advertising. He's a regular host on TalkSport and BBC London. And in his past life, he was editor-in-chief of Heat magazine. And until March this year, he was editor-in-chief of the Comedy Central channel. His journalism appears in The Guardian, in The Telegraph, and he writes a bi-weekly column for The Big Issue. So what an honour it is to have him here this evening with us. He was almost the only member of the Delaney dynasty that didn't work in advertising until just recently, earlier this year, he was hired by an ad agency to write a script. Soon afterwards, they lost that account, and so he's now decided to stick purely to journalism, and clearly, I I think we're all better for that. But ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause for Sam Delaney, author, broadcaster, and journalist.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark. Thanks all of you for coming. Thanks to Google for hosting this. I've never been here before, but it's everything I could have possibly dreamed of. Thanks for that lovely introduction, Mark. You're a great man. I hear you're a great MD. You are obviously a shit husband. But 2 out of 3 is all right. Can I just say as well, I'm really honoured and happy to be working with the Advertising Association, who are a great organisation. To my mind, they're the best of all the industry bodies. The others are shit in comparison. They're better than the British Federation of Ad Types. They're much better than the Design and Dickhead Association. They're even better than the Royal Society of Creative Wankers, an organisation which I had the honour of being president of in the late noughties for a brief time. The Advertising Association is the best of all of them. I'll tell you why. As Mark's already said, forgive me for covering some of this ground again, but they are the only industry body that brings together clients, media, and agencies. They make collective case for all parts of that mix to government. They give us evidence that advertising is good for society as a whole, as well as making the case for advertising. They challenge us too. They encourage us to step back and contemplate the ethics and morals of this industry. And that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to take 4 great young talents from across the industry. We're going to give them the complex and important topic of responsible advertising. And we're going to get them to debate the shit out of it. You, the audience, will vote for the ones you think make the most compelling arguments. And in about an hour's time, the final 2 will battle physically with tridents to the death to see who is the best at knowing about responsible advertising. No, they'll have a Q&A and then you'll vote again, and then the winner will win all of our admiration and respect and also a bottle of mid-price champagne. And that will be wonderful. Let me tell you the question that they will be debating tonight. This is it. There we go. The Advertising Association's job is to promote responsible advertising. What would you do to change advertising for the better? I'll tell you a few of the rules. They each get strictly 10 minutes. If they go over those 10 minutes, I will give you all a signal and everyone just starts shouting stop. In the name of God, stop. I'll tell you something, you'll have to, use your vote wisely. So when you're listening to them, don't vote on the basis of which one you fancy or who's got the funniest jokes or anything. Okay, think of these criteria. Bravery, personality, originality of thinking. Who has the most compelling, succinct and convincing argument? Those are the only things that you should really be focusing on when you cast your vote at the end using the fantastic widgets that you'll find on your seat. That is what we're voting with because we are way ahead of British democracy in Parliament. This is the future and it's goddamn brilliant. Let me tell you who the speakers are. We've got Paddy Collins from Google. We've got James Dawkins from DLKW Low. From the media side, we've got Kitty Jans-Moore from Mediacom. And our client representative is Hannah Stenton. I'll introduce them all in more detail as they come up onto the stage. Our first speaker will be Paddy Collins. Paddy joined Google almost 2 years ago, following an 8-year stint at the Financial Times as head of strategic sales. He now works in the UK agency team as an industry manager, helping the strategists and planners across Publicis work with YouTube and develop a clearer idea of how the various parts of Google can work together. Let's give him a big round of applause. Welcome on stage, Paddy Collins. Good luck.
This was a lot easier in the kitchen last night, to be honest. Thank you very much. My name's Paddy Collins, and mercifully for the next 10 minutes, I don't work for Google. So this is my opinion. Don't hold it against them. They get enough held against them. But for the next 10 minutes, this is me. I was a little bit nervous about this today, so I spoke to my sister-in-law, who's a judge. So she's my sister-in-law in both senses of the word. And she gave me 3 pieces of advice. I said, what do I do, Cass? Help me out. And she said, well, listen. She said, stand up so they can see you, speak up so they can hear you, and sit down and let them get on with it. So with your kind permission, give me about 10 minutes and then I'll let you get on with it. It's a really tricky question tonight, and like all sort of tricky questions, for me, it immediately raised 2 more. It's a bit like a hydra. You cut the head off, you get more stuff. The first for me was, if it's about responsibility, then what are we actually really responsible for? Because we get like a lot on our plate. What are we really responsible for? And the second bit was, if we're going to make something better, then how do we do that? Because there's 2 ways of making things better. You can either do more of the good stuff or just loads less of the shit stuff. So which one are we going to kind of employ? And hopefully I'm going to answer that. But before that, I thought, because it's Google, I thought it'd be a little bit interactive. Could I just see a quick show of hands if you think things are getting better, just in general? If you think things are all right, on the up? I'm just trying to work out if I'm doing optimist or pessimist. And to be honest, if it's all the hands go up, then I'll get out of the way, because I'll only mess it up for 10 minutes. All right, and now hands if you think things are getting worse. You know, if you've had a terrible day, things are going badly. Because if it's, to be honest, if it's going badly, very nervous. If it's going badly, I'll go and get a responsible adult. We'll get someone else in here. We'll sort this out. The weird thing is, I agree basically with all of you, and that's a bit of a sort of slight odd position of duality. But I guess if it was down to me, what I came to, if I could change something, the only thing I'd really change was this one single word. I'm not going to give that up at the start of the speech. You'll have to stay with me for that. But that's the only thing that I want to change, because to me, I think we're in this sort of golden age of advertising, and the only responsibility that we really have is to make the very best work that we can. That's it. Everything else is someone else's concern. We should be making the very best use of all the technology and all the stuff that lays at our fingertips. And I guess when I was, and also I did a little comedy reveal. This won't work now because I got hand-drawn slides, didn't I? I forgot them. That's the title of it. Don't worry about that. That was the vote. Never leave it low. And this was meant to be the comedy reveal. But it don't work on the side screens either. So it's all gone to pot already. Don't worry about it. Stay with me, we'll be fine. So to me, right, things are getting better and worse simultaneously. And I think advertising is probably the best industry you could imagine to deal with that. We love duality. We love this kind of like constant friction that goes through the fact that we are simultaneously modern and old-fashioned. And I think actually if you take that a stage further, we should embrace that, right? We shouldn't shy away from that. You should look at particularly the area that we work in Britain, and think, well, actually, this is the best equipped country in the world to deal with that kind of duality. We shouldn't be, we shouldn't shy away from it. We shouldn't hide from it. We certainly shouldn't patronise the public by thinking that they don't get it. We are this wonderful kind of like constant people of paradox. I'll give you some examples, and you won't see anyone else draw a Led Zeppelin album cover tonight, I assure you of that. Only we would come up with a band called Lead Balloon and have it be successful. Only we, with an annual rainfall that's best described as torrential, would come up with cricket. So I think, I was trying to find a big event to sort of sum this all up, and I found this quote, which is about the Olympic opening ceremony. And the New York Times said, Britain offered a display of humour and humbleness that can only stem from a deep-rooted sense of superiority. Wonderful, that's us, that's how we do it. So, with all these things in place, with all the ingredients in place, the fact that we are happily as an industry peddling perception and, we're comfortable with all of that, I thought, how are we getting on? And that clock is very onerous, so we're going to try and speed along with this. You guys will all know this. I couldn't try and get it up without referencing Dave Trott. But if you're going to steal from someone good. This is all the money that's spent in advertising last year. 4% of it was remembered positively, 7% of it was remembered negatively, and 89% weren't remembered at all. 89% was £16 billion thrown against the wall. And if you start to think about some other little sort of stats and studies that you can find, if you look at the number of complaints the ASA get, they normally get about 31,000 complaints a year, and literally for the last few years it's been within a couple of hundred. They get the same level of complaints. The only reason it went up last year to 37,000 was that Paddy Power did an ad around the Oscar Pistorius trial, and that garnered about 6,000 complaints on its own. So most of the money is invisible. No one's complaining anymore. And also, if you look at the work that the Advertising Association does with the favourability index, when they started it in 1994, about 54% of people were favourable towards advertising. And when they ran it last year, about 25% of people were favourable to it. But it's not a polarised thing. The people who liked advertising haven't decided they don't like it. They just decided they don't care. So my kind of contention for tonight is that in this kind of time of unparalleled opportunity for advertising, all we're really doing is chasing people around the internet with a pair of shoes they looked at once and didn't want. That happens quite a lot. In my case, it's a couch, but it still follows me. We're sort of leching and lurching and offending our way over what for the British public is a pretty ample bound of kind of permissibility in terms of what you can say. You've got Paddy Power launching across it. And then we're paying like a really hefty premium, 16 billion quid for invisibility. So I think the real crime, the thing that I would change is somewhere in here, the fact that we just live in the middle. So I thought, well, what kind of illustrates that? And the art picks up a pace here. In the 1990s, there were two Russian artists called Komar and Melamed, and they did a big study, a big survey, and they asked people in all different countries, what would your perfect picture look like? And in every country, the answer was, it's mainly blue, it's got some people in the foreground, a couple of livestock. Every country. And I think, I didn't want to single out any advertiser, so I'm going to use that as a proxy for more or less the entire industry. Like, what sort of ad should we make? Bit of blue, couple of livestock. I told you to get a bit of blue. And then I wanted to talk about this, and I wonder if this is a familiar feeling for people in the audience. How often have you had just a little like an idea that you really believed in, and you're like, yeah, this is going to be really good, and you get excited about it, and nothing really bad happens. No one really, it dies naturally. It doesn't get killed, but it kind of gets killed in little inches. The client says, yeah, maybe. What else you got? Or it doesn't quite fit in a procurement matrix, or it looks a little bit expensive, or it takes a little bit of time, and just for some reason you can't get enough oxygen around it. Like, you just can't make that idea survive. And that's what I think is the problem, to be honest, and I'm going to hopefully try and solve it. Small observation, when I first started this, there's a little vote, and with the vote I gave you two options accompanying each one. The first was that I'd do nothing, and the second was that I'd go and get someone else. And only in advertising would that not be that much of a shock. People were like, it's pretty reasonable. Yeah, don't touch it if it's not broken, or yeah, get someone else. So it's that kind of malaise that I guess that I want to talk about, because in my mind, the biggest sin that we could commit, the biggest thing that we could be guilty of, would be just failing just a little bit. No one should ever just fail. You should either fail spectacularly, or just don't even bother. So this is the word I get rid of. I want to get rid of the word maybe, because I think that's the word that kills it all, because it's the most passive kind of aggressive word in advertising. You come up with an idea, whether it's a client judging an agency's work, whether it's an agency briefing a media owner, whether it's a media owner thinking about content, or it's a big technology concern like the one we're sat in trying to come up with an innovative new product. We don't say yes or no. We don't nail our colours to the mast. Our responsibility is to produce the very best work we can. And yet we found this really safe way of saying, yeah, maybe. And I think that really, to me, is what kills creativity. I think, to me, when you think about what else it might be, could it be time? Not really. If you give me loads of time, I still do it at the last minute. Ask my colleagues. It can't be money, because we've got 16 billion quid knocking around, so we've got enough money to do more or less anything we want. And it can't be talent, because look at you beautiful people. Well, it's a vote. Come on, give me a break. I'm going to have to canvass some opinion at some point. So yeah, that's my position on this, really. I think we should stop saying maybe. I think we should be braver. I think we should nail our colours to the mast. And I think we should be safe in the knowledge that either we will be this glorious, glittering, wonderful success, and that'd be great, wouldn't that be lovely? Or we'll be this catastrophic pile of flaming wreckage. But at least we'll have the light from that to illuminate where we shouldn't go. So I think if we could start saying yes or no, if we could commit and stop saying maybe, no more maybes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paddy. What an exciting and amusing start to tonight's proceedings. Next up, we have James Dawkins. James is a planner from DLKW Low. He's coming into his third year there after stints at Havas Worldwide and McCann Erickson in Manchester. He has worked on brands including the British Heart Foundation, Aldi, one I can't pronounce, Durex, Holiday Inn, Morrison's and the Post Office. Please welcome on stage, James Dawkins.
That one was actually Reckitt Benckiser that you couldn't pronounce. Hi there, I'm James, and as you said, I am a planner at the advertising agency DLKW Low. And I've actually spent the last 6 years tirelessly working to try and waste everyone's resources and actually try to bring down society from the ground up. We get a pretty bad rep, don't we? If you actually type into Google, advertising is evil, you'll get about 40 million results in under half a second. So what would I do to change advertising for the better? Well, I'm actually going to argue that we're already doing a lot of things to change advertising for the better. The problem isn't what we're doing. The problem is this. The problem is perception of what we're doing. So I would start by changing people's perceptions of the advertising industry. The idea? I'm going to talk to you about three things. First of all, why perception is so important. Secondly, what I would do to start changing people's perceptions of advertising. And thirdly, how changing people's perceptions would actually change advertising for the better. So why is perception so important? Roy Sutherland argues in a quite brilliant TED talk that perspective is everything. How you perceive something affects how you feel about it, affects the value you place on it, to the point where actually, arguably, perception is as important as reality. It's interesting when you take this as an example. The single inclusion of one word completely changes how you feel to what is exactly the same image. One of the best examples of the power of perception is painkillers. So the painkillers that are perceived to be more expensive and or branded are actually proven to be more effective at getting rid of pain. And I don't just mean psychologically, the old placebo effect, physiologically proven to be better at removing pain. So if perception's key, how we frame things is absolutely key. Rory Sutherland goes on to argue that the importance of reframing something cannot be overstated. Framing sets perception up, from reframing a product to reframing a whole business. I don't know if anyone knows who this is. No, it was just McDonald's. So back in 2002, McDonald's in Australia was in crisis. They'd seen 10 years of sales decline, and they were facing increasing animosity from the Australian public over the quality of their food. Now, actually, over those 10 years, nothing had changed about their food. People's frame of reference had. So what did they do? Well, the first thing they did was not change the products. They didn't change the reality. They just used advertising to change perceptions. So successfully that in 2003 and 2004, they averaged an increase of 400,000 extra people into their restaurants every week, just by changing perceptions. Abraham Lincoln once said, "We can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have roses." A simple shift in perspective creates a completely different feeling. So what's this got to do with changing advertising for the better, you ask? Where this actually all started for me was a realisation that we're already doing a lot of things to change advertising for the better. From Tom Knox's presidential speech about advertising as a force for good, to the awards programmes starting to recognise not just economic success, but societal good, to clients like Unilever shifting the focus of their business to a higher social purpose. And yet we still get this. So why, if we're doing all of that, is our perception not keeping up? I'd argue, ironically, it's because we're not very good at advertising ourselves. Which... Say what? So what would I do to change people's perceptions of advertising? I'd start by reframing the argument for advertising. And why that is, so our current Bible, at least at DLKWLO, is Daniel Kahneman's System 1, System 2 thinking. System 1 being subconscious but fast, intuitive, emotional. System 2 being our conscious mind, which is slower, more considered, more rational. Now, the argument is we spent far too much appealing to this one, the rational one, when actually most of our decisions are made here in the emotional space. Les Binet, in his paper, The Long and the Short of It, actually proved that emotional advertising is more powerful than rational advertising. And the principle of emotional over rational holds true in other walks of life as well. So this is a brilliant book for any parents out here. It's called The Whole Brain Child. In that, they argue that in a child's development, it's important to focus on both their rational brain and their emotional brain. And they give a brilliant example of when a child is having a tantrum over something completely irrational, like, why is my birthday 9 months away? Now, a parent's response is obviously instinctively very rational, because it's September and your birthday's in June. Surely that doesn't make sense. But actually the best way to deal with that is to first connect emotionally with them. Hug them, cuddle them, ask them if they're feeling okay, before then delivering the rational news that their birthday's still 9 months away. Let me go back actually one. So what I do is given all of that, emotional first, rational second, you think, given we're experts in advertising, we'd start the argument for advertising with an emotional set, wouldn't we? We certainly wouldn't start it with a rational economic argument. Apparently not. So in Tom Knox's presidential speech, the first thing he says advertising is good for is, lo and behold, the economy. In James Murphy's debate for the case for advertising, the first thing he says is there's a growing set of evidence that advertising has a profound effect on the economy. Even our own advertising association, sorry guys, start with the case for advertising as it's good for the economy. Now, I'm not saying the rational economic argument isn't a good argument. It really is. Just not the right place to start. Start with the emotional and support with the rational. As simple a change as advertising is good for society, communities and people, for me, I'd argue, instantly gives you a slightly different feel as to what we are about. We're not arguing about an economic argument. Second thing I do, come back again, which naturally falls out of reframing the argument, is bring to the forefront and celebrate the good we do, because we do a lot of good. And by good, I don't just mean altruistic, charity-esque stuff. I mean good in the wider sense of the word, from inspiring people to get fit, or inspiring people to be the best person they can be, to challenging social stigmas, social issues, to literally saving lives. We do a hell of a lot of good already, and yet all we're focused on is the economic argument. We don't advertise this enough. So that's how I'd start to change perceptions. How do I think that would change the actual reality of advertising? Firstly, if we change the perceptions of advertising, what we're about, so not just about economic success, but about wider societal good, we start to measure ourselves in a different way. We start to aim for a different meaning of good. Best example is probably the IPA Effectiveness Awards. So the most stringent, arguably the most prestigious awards for advertising. Now, when you get down to it, actually what they mean by effectiveness is economic effectiveness. Why is it not a wider sense of that? If you change perception of what the industry's about, they have to change how they measure us and how they award us. But finally, and the most important bit of changing perceptions of the industry, is about getting the right people into advertising. If we are seen as just about economic success, you're going to get a certain type of person who rationally believes, I don't mind actually making a bit of money for clients. If we're about a wider societal good, we get the people who actually want to change advertising for the better. And just to clarify, I don't mean your philanthropists, your do-gooders. I mean just people in general who want to do good. So I think people in here would, I think, agree that the best creatives and strategists that we get into the industry are the ones with genuine human compassion, with empathy, emotional intelligence, the one who actually want to affect people's lives in a good way. We need to be sure that they see advertising in the right way so they join us. There's also a growing body of research to show that the new generation, the new millennials, are more concerned with these type of values. They want to do good, increasingly want to do good. So just the top one of those. So 48% millennials in the UK have or will deliberately seek out employers whose corporate responsibility behaviour reflects their own. It's what they're looking for. Now, actually, the best way of framing this for me is this man. which you might laugh, but there might be the next Gandhi out there, the next revolutionary. And I thought someone might laugh. You frame the question, would he consider joining an industry that's predominantly about economic success, or even perceived to be actually harmful to society? I'd argue probably not. Would he join an industry that's perceived to be about wider societal good? I'd argue there's a hell of a lot more chance than the former. Thank you.
Well done, James. I will be going into further detail with my own ill-thought-through thoughts and remarks on each of your presentations before the voting process. But for now, I will simply say thorough. That's just a taste of what I'm going to go into later. Okay, next up, we've got Kitty Jans Moore. It is Jans, not Jans. I checked that. I'm not just unsophisticated. Kitty is a research manager in the MediaCom Real World Insight team, working on quantitative projects across a range of clients and sectors. She recently helped to evaluate the effect of the BBC documentary The Met Police in London as part of an integrated research piece utilising qualitative and social listening methodologies. And she's managed multiple projects in the automotive category. I know what you're thinking. What the bloody hell does any of that mean? Well, listen, I don't know either, but one thing's for sure, she sounds clever. So, let's welcome her onto stage, Kitty.
Well, thank you very much for that, I think. There's going to be quite a bit of overlap with some of the stuff that James is actually just talking about, which basically means we're right. So just bear that in mind. My name's Kitty. Yes, I'm here from MediaCom. What would I do to change advertising for the better? It's really easy. I would advertise more. Let me explain. So yes, we've heard about this. We know that there's an issue with trust. I actually think that people have a right to be worried. My God, we are so powerful. Our whole business is about changing people's minds, about persuading them, about pushing them in directions they might not normally have gone in. So of course they're going to be concerned. And if you're here, I'm going to wager that you are involved in the advertising industry as I am. And you will know that advertising, for the most part, it works. We wouldn't be here, we wouldn't believe in it, it wouldn't be the multi-billion-dollar business that it is today if it wasn't. So yes, people have a right to be at least a bit worried. And what a responsibility that is for us. Now, I could talk to you about whether there's any foundation in it, whether there's any foundation in justification for how they're feeling. But as James has already touched on, thank you very much, perceptions matter. Perceptions are as good as truth. If we are seen to be untrustworthy, then that's as good as if we are. So what do I suggest? Show them. Actions, not word. I want to advertise more, not cut it back. I want to give people a reason to believe in us. Okay, so advertise more. My first recommendation is going to be an always-on social strategy. Except not this kind. I know what you were thinking. No. What this is all about, for me, is getting a social cause and then living it always, constantly. So brands, companies, anyone here in this audience from that background, this is for you. Choose yourself a cause. Go on, pick one. Pick wisely. The only thing that I will stipulate is that it has to be about more than money, more than profits, all of that, and also something that your company can genuinely have a positive impact on. Have you got one? I think that brands and companies that are already living with this kind of ethical responsibility are fantastic examples of power used well. So you're going to see some familiar brands here, but there are some that are doing wonderful things with their messaging, just living something all the time with their message. You might notice a bit of a theme going on, always like a girl, Under Armour, Dove Real Beauty. Female empowerment means a hell of a lot to me, but it also means a hell of a lot to some of our consumers too. But brands aren't just logos. They're not just messages. They are more than that. They are behavior as well. And this is where I've got Unilever, their pledge to sustainability. You have to be aware of your brand and your products and the effect that it's having on the real world. If you don't do that, it's siloed, it's short-sighted, and that's not how the consumer will be thinking about it. So once you've got your cause, integrity, living it always. I mean, isn't that the epitome of always on? It's about taking corporate social responsibility and bringing it to the heart of your brand, of what you stand for, making it synonymous with what you are. And this is all about transparency. That's the opposite of spin, the opposite of manipulation. And we know that consumers hate spin and manipulation. But the thing is, you would have to do it at all times because the internet, it sees far, it's got a long memory, thank you very much Google, and people have it in their pockets all the time. Hypocrisy in this environment, it just won't be tolerated. So your actions have got to back up your words. If you say you're about helping people, you're about service, you care, then you can't have a bad employee record. You can't be using sweatshops, you can't be employing on 0 hours contracts, you can't be skimming off tips from your staff. Of course, that's going to erode trust. Similarly, if you're all about animal welfare, animal rights, and you align yourself with a brand with a very patchy PETA record, then yes, that's going to have a negative effect. And that's going to have a negative effect not just on you, but across our whole industry. So when I say, so I love this quote. I think this is a really good example. You can't advertise your way out of a situation that you have behaved yourself into. I think that's so true. So when I'm saying always more advertising, I'm talking about this, living your cause at all times. And I think if we do this right, we'll see self-regulation that's far more powerful than legislation, and also so much more valued by our consumers because it comes from us, it's organic. Now, truth, social conscience, that's not just for brands and companies in it, because there are other people doing this at all times. And I'm talking about charities, government arms, NGOs. And there's some fantastic work here. So I'm saying, let's advertise more, yes, more, but more voices. Let's widen the debate. Let's bring some more of this lauded work to the front. So I've got some more examples, Sport England, This Girl Can, the Home Office, something I used to walk past on my way home from Camden Council. People know that companies and brands, yeah, we're here to sell. They understand that. But these guys, they're totally for society's improvement. I think more of them is better for our whole industry. I want to do it through pro bono work. I'd like more partnerships in this area because we'll be getting more discussion, reaching more people with really difficult topics. How fantastic would that be? And whilst I'm on it, more people is something I want. So more advertising, more voices, more people, bring them all in, except only the right people. Now, in this instance, I'm talking about the right people, I'm talking about adults, because we have very strict rules on what we can do for children. I think that's an issue with trust, but I could go on about it for another 10-minute presentation. I won't do that to you here and now. So for now, I'm talking about the right people and adults. And the wonderful things about adults is they are capable of making their own decisions. I really strongly believe this. I think it's patronizing to assume anything other. I'm looking around this room. I think we're all over 18. We are all allowed to take a flutter on the Grand National. We are all allowed to have a burger if we're hungry. And God knows, I'm going to have a glass of wine at the end of this. The other wonderful thing about adults talking to the right people is that actually there's some damage limitation in place if we get it wrong. Do you know why? Adults talk back. Adults will tell you if they don't like something, and then it's our job to listen. I think complaints are actually a really vital part of our dialogue. If we're getting more advertising, more people, more voices, yes, we're going to get more feedback. And that's more chances for us to improve. And we've got to keep on learning and improving. That's vital too. Because trust itself, that's a relationship. The wonderful thing is that actually our tools as marketers, yeah, they're getting better. They're getting better all the time. With the advent of programmatic buying, with the diversification of channels, these are all wonderful ways that we can get volume without sacrificing accuracy. And I know that we're trying to get the right people. I know that we're actually trying to do it right. So that comes on to my last bit, already touched on. Let's tell consumers that, because I don't think they always know. So let's advertise more of ourselves. Because I am so proud of this industry, the creativity, the innovation. Yes, we've talked about the economy. We help with the free internet. Again, thanks for Google. And I'm also so proud of the responsibility that I see people taking. I've worked with alcohol brands. I've done the training. I know that they often go above and beyond what's needed. I'm not saying we always get it right. We don't. Here is a very controversial advert that ran recently, Yves Saint Laurent. I personally think she's too skinny. Yes, this ad was pulled, but that's wonderful because there was a dialogue and then it got taken away because we do have the right structures and safeguards in place. And I want to remind people that we've got laws and we follow them. And yeah, we make mistakes, but we delight people too, don't we? So more work, more advertising, more delight. And I really welcome anything that reminds people that we are not the bad guys. And I love this from the ASA. An ad has to be legal, decent, honest, and truthful. That's fantastic. We are trying to be responsible, yes. So I guess to sum up, when I'm saying more from brands all the time, more voices, more accuracy, more dialogue, more about us, I'm not saying spam people, exactly the opposite. I'm asking for more integrity in everything. I think what I'm really saying is a greater quantity of quality, and I think if we do this, we can strengthen relationships with the public, because we're going to be showing them why they can trust us. And I think it's through advertising that our intentions can speak loudest. So let's widen the focus, better advertising, better world, better us as an industry. So let's do more fantastic work. Thank you very much. Oops, sorry.
Thank you, Kitty. That was very inspiring. Our last speaker is Hannah Stenton from Aviva, formerly Norwich Union. I preferred it when it was Norwich Union, but I still am a fan. Hannah joined Aviva in 2013 on the Marketing Graduate Scheme. She's worked in Life Direct Marketing as an online marketing consultant, delivering online and offline campaigns and improving the customer's experience of digital channels. She's also worked in future propositions, leading on Aviva's wearable technology and telematics campaign. Now Hannah works in group brand and is delivering a new global brand strategy, as well as everyday governance and education of Aviva's brand across global markets. She told me not, no, in fact, I'm not going to tell you what she does. She's going to tell you now what the special thing is. I'll leave it to Hannah. Welcome her on stage.
Hello. I was really worried about going last this evening. I was worried that everyone else might have covered what I was already going to say, but I can assure you I might be a little bit different. When I show you this picture, you might think what I'm about to tell you is that everyone in advertising are like a flock of sheep, that we follow trends and our consumers follow us, or that the Advertising Association is like a shepherd and we're their sheep. However, I don't believe in either of those statements. This is my flock of pedigree blue-faced Leicester sheep, currently grazing on my parents' farm in Thorntonley Dale, North Yorkshire. As you can probably tell, I love my sheep, and I think they're going to provide a really useful prop for my presentation this evening. When reflecting on the brief, the Advertising Association's job is to promote responsible advertising. What would you do to change advertising for the better? I came across 5 key areas. Segmentation, winning awards, small print, fences, and competition. So let's start with segmentation. Like many misconceptions about consumers and advertising, people often think that all sheep look the same, perhaps a little like this one. However, there are many different breeds, starting with the Jacob in the top right, down to the Herdwick in the bottom left, with the Cheviot, the Swartbull, the Swaledale, the Ryland, and everything in between. And this is completely the same when it comes to customers and consumers. Everyone is different. And in order to change advertising for the better, we need to know who we're targeting and how they would like to be targeted. Currently, I think in advertising we bombard people. We just push so much out there at customers, and we need to get away from rigid standard segmentation and really personalise our advertising to meet their customers' wants and needs. There's so much opportunity with all the data we have and how we can segment people. And I really think it's our responsibility to stop pushing things at consumers constantly and really engage with them and want them to pull things from us. Let's move on to winning awards. As a brand as brands and agencies, it's our job to sell. Even outside work, everyone's always selling. I know when I first meet someone, I always want you guys to see everyone see the best version of me. And this is why I came in these this evening, rather than these. However, this might not happen gracefully. These are much more me. Everything in life is always about putting your best self forward. And this is so true in advertising. We're always wanting to show our customers how fantastic we are and how great and how we can do things better than everyone else. And there's nothing wrong with this. And this is exactly the same in the sheep world. No sheep would ever go to the field, go to the show, rough and ready in its original state. It would always be washed, have its wool coloured and tinted, and even its face whitened in some cases. And that's just one breed, so you can imagine all the different breeds, what happens with all of those to get them looking like this. So they'd never go in their natural state. We always want them to be the best they could look in order to help them win awards. And don't get me wrong, winning awards isn't all bad. There's nothing wrong with winning awards, but we need to make sure, as clients and agencies, we focus on what's important. Selling and creating a commercial effect. People get so distracted with winning awards, attending awards ceremonies, getting the fantastic PR, and the little logo to go on the bottom of everything. And so I think it's awards, we have to see awards as a great byproduct. What we really shouldn't do is chase them to the detriment of everything else, as it's really not responsible. The same time, effort and money could go on doing something else, for example, changing a customer journey and making things better and easier and simpler, just more convenient for our customers. So therefore, I think it's really important to consider that diverting energy and resource on something that wouldn't help us attract and retain customers and meet the bottom line really shouldn't be a priority. Let's move to small print. As much as I would like to spend all my time on the farm, the day job beckons, and as you know, I work in insurance, an industry that's full of terms and conditions and is highly regulated. Wouldn't it be so much better for the customer if we relied less on small print and were more upfront with the important information? Apple, for example. Can I ask you guys to get involved? Can anyone put their hand up if they've actually read the full Apple terms and conditions when they've run an update on their iPhone? One out of all of them. You've probably got too much time on your hands. And I think it's so much easier to scroll right down to the bottom and click accept. I know I do it. And I feel this is okay in a way because Apple's a company that I trust and I kind of think that they're going to do the best thing for me. And there's not that much in the small print. However, you never know, and so many other brands probably don't have that right. I understand why we need terms and conditions. It's the legal stuff. It's just we need to manage it better. So as long as we manage it better, I think customers will see that putting our best self forward isn't compromised by the terms and conditions that sit behind it. Sheep, on the other hand, what you see is what you get. Most farmers are upfront if there's something wrong with the sheep because they know it's going to come back to bite them. In other situations, you can see for yourself, it's hard to not realise if a sheep only has 3 legs. And if something does happen once you've bought a pedigree sheep, and it'll be talked about in the industry, and a farmer will get a terrible reputation, and so no one will ever buy from them again. And I think that's something that we need to take into account as a brand, that the openness and transparency would really go a long way in our industry. So therefore, to summarise this point, we should avoid small print and additional complication, as it's an additional complication and this destroys trusts. Let's go to fences. So in broadcasting, there's Clearcast. Everything goes through a funnel and gets checked. Would this be a good thing, as this prevents overly controversial ads? Just think how fast things can go viral and online, and for some advertisers, sorry about this, it's so tempting to jump out of the field, over the fence and run for the hill, damaging their reputation and the reputation of the industries. Let's be clear, what I'm not saying is that we should all put everything through a funnel. I'm just saying we need to be more responsible as brands and our agencies, build our own fences and stay within them. Therefore, we won't invite more contempt from customers and consumers and more control from the regulators. So my final point is competition. As everyone knows, competition is a force for good, and it's our responsibility to drive it as an industry. It leads to innovation and improvements and creates an upward spiral. Customers are more informed and make better decisions, and this is exactly the same in the sheep industry. Everyone goes to the shows, whether it's a local show, a big show like the Yorkshire or the Highland, and everyone's out there to compete, to try and prove that they've got the best stock out there. Farmers see everyone else's stock, and they know how far they've got to go in order to be better next year. And everyone knows they really want to just get in the Scottish farmer. So in summary, every brand should be one that consumers relate to and trust. As consumers are attracted to brands that they feel they trust, and they're willing to pay more, stay longer, and this affects the bottom line. So in summary, being a sheep isn't all bad. They have parameters, their needs are individually met, they don't come with small print, and they enjoy a little bit of friendly competition. But most importantly, Dad and I are building a well-trusted, commercially viable business. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Thanks to all four of you for fascinating, funny and inspirational talks. Very shortly, we will be casting our votes. Well, you will. I won't be. But what I will do now is summarise some of the things, just to freshen your memory as to what's been said over the past 40 minutes. I do have some sort of formal summaries of the arguments that were made, but I think you're all intelligent enough and have got strong enough memories to have understood all of those talks, probably a lot better than I did. But I do know this. I wrote a book about elections and how advertising plays a role in them this year, and I learned a lot, and the main thing I learned is that most election results are influenced by idiots. The pollster Bob Worcester told me there was just 4% of people who decide the outcome of every election, right? So you got like 30% will just vote Labour, whatever, 30% will just vote Tory, whatever, another 20% vote for the Lib Dems or some other weird party, and then there's 20% left who are kind of floaters, but only a tiny number of them, he reckons it's about 4% total electorate, actually have an influence on the outcome, because they're the only ones who live in marginal seats, right? And all the research shows that tiny 4%, that small handful of people who influence the ultimate outcome, those floating voters in marginal seats, are the least likely to be engaged in politics outside of election time. So they pay no attention to question time, they pay no attention to what's going on in the House of Commons, they don't read the newspapers, nothing, but they kind of vote because they go, oh, I better vote, I'm obliged to vote. So anyway, that's why you end up with a pig fucker in number 10. There is a point to what I'm saying though, right? The point I'm making is that if we really want to make this a democratic process that reflects the real world, then it's going to be affected by stupid people, but you guys all seem quite clever because you're here at a sort of a posh, clever do, rather than just getting drunk or watching the football or something. So allow me to give the idiot version of what's just happened, because I understood less than anything that you lot might have said. I made a few notes as I went along. This is what I remember. Paddy, these are just little scribbled notes. It was very funny, great slides, flattered the audience, which is good. I enjoyed his inspiring tirade against the tyranny of mediocrity. On the downside, though, I thought he didn't address the question. But who cares? It was funny, right? And he said that you're all beautiful. James said that McDonald's made shit food, but then tricked people in thinking that was all right using advertising. Again, you know, this is probably not what he meant. I'm giving you my interpretation. He had 2 pictures of some brains racing, which I thought was cool. Also, he ended on a picture of Gandhi. So if you don't vote for him, are you a racist? I'll let you decide. Let your conscience guide you. Kitty said we should advertise people into submission. I thought that was bold. But I did like the fact she ran pictures of that awesome ad that said Beachbody Ready. It's a great ad, yeah? Everyone loves that ad. It's the best ad of the year. So I thought that was really a strong point. And Hannah, she was the only one to perform a costume change, much like Madonna's Blonde Ambition tour of the late 80s. I enjoyed that. Also had a picture of herself with the Queen. Impressive. Nevertheless, the question remains, why the sheep, Hannah? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So anyway, that's my rendition of events. I apologise for it being founded in such flimsy understanding of what all of you said. But my faith is in all you guys being cleverer than me and the average British voter. Use your widget, right, now. Okay, if you want Paddy to win, vote 1. If you want James to win, press 2. If you want Kitty to win, press 3. And if you want Hannah to win, press 4. Okay, the 2 with the most votes go through into the next round, the fighting round. But don't be guided by who you think would be the best physical fight, the best spectacle. Vote on the basis of their arguments. Shortly, the results will appear on an iPad in front of me. Qualifying into the physical confrontation round. Let's just be clear. These 2 names are the people who are in the final, right? Let's be absolutely thorough about this, because it could be really embarrassing. Put your hands together and welcome into the deathmatch round of Last One Standing, Paddy and James. Well done, Paddy and James.
This is my bad side.
Kitty, Hannah, I didn't vote.
You sure?
I have no influence over any of this, and as I understand it, I've already been paid. So I think it's a travesty. I'll go out and say it. No, I haven't been paid yet. I take that back. Okay, so now what happens in the deathmatch round is it's over to you guys. We have a Q&A. Really put these guys through the ringer. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's see how they perform when they're not just doing a rendition of their well-rehearsed slideshows, and see which one you find the most impressive. So stick your hands up. There's a microphone here in the audience. This lovely lady will bring it over to you, and post your questions, please. Hands up.
Great, done.
You will ruin this entire thing if you don't put your hand up.
Don't all jump at once.
Yes.
James, love your mentioning of Kahneman. Why do you guys think that advertising is not using enough of psychology, since you're actually advertising to human beings, and psychology is the science of human beings?
That's a really good point. Partly my point in there. I think actually we should be, and we're starting to. So this is actually probably the first psychological theory that actually has some kind of real credence, and people can kind of hang their hat off. Because obviously we are advertising to human beings. If we start to understand that more, we can advertise more. I've not really answered your question, have I? No. So what's the question again?
Not my job to listen to that bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said.
Should do.
Do you want the same question to Paddy? Yeah.
It's an excellent question. I'm glad you asked me that.
Oh, you've got one.
I think it's like a lot of things in advertising where it's not that it's a new thing. I think it's currently the new thing. I think Kahneman is a terrific book, which I managed to get about halfway through the first chapter. And I think that there's probably a lot of people quoting it kind of, in a similar way. I think there's probably a difference between human nature and human behaviour. And I think advertising can only really change sort of human behaviour. And I think perhaps we get a little bit distracted. And it's nice to have science in pitches, right? Because it's a lot more credible than just we like this. But I think maybe we try, and it's not an overreach, but I think we're probably throwing a lot of science at a problem. So I think it's one of those things where a little bit more judgment, we could probably pick out some really good kind of science to work with rather than just kind of throwing a lot of stuff at it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
We have another question here.
A question for Paddy. Kind of similar to Sam's point. I thought you had some really interesting ideas, but I don't know necessarily whether it is to the question.
Yeah. It's tricky, isn't it? I think you've got to kind of similar to my previous point, I think you've got to be really distinct about what you can affect and what you can't affect. I thought it was kind of interesting when I saw someone put a Volkswagen example up today. And I thought, fucking hell, they are probably the most creatively awarded, certainly car company. They're the classic ad that everyone mentions. And kind of overnight, they've destroyed, I would say, the reputation. The CEO's gone today, the company's kind of has crumpled under this thing. You think, well, that's not the fault of the advertising. So, why don't we just be really distinct about what's our responsibility, right? Because we can't stop them fiddling the dial on the car, but we can make the car really compelling. So before we get dragged in a million different directions, given that we don't really have an ad industry, right? We've got this kind of conglomerate of different companies. You've got media owners, agencies, creative agencies, technology companies. All this kind of stuff is a loose formation that makes the ad industry. So let's just be really distinct about our responsibility is to do the absolute best work we can. And everything else kind of falls on, to my mind, a little bit to the client, a little bit to the media owner, but to a lot of other bits in it. And I think we're probably a bit too broad-shouldered. We take too much on.
This gentleman here, yeah.
Great talk, both. James, I just wondered, obviously, I agree a lot that we do great work and it's a lot about changing our perception or people's perception of the advertising industry. But I hope you agree we're not perfect. So I'd like to get your perspective of how do we make it better, even if, perception issue is almost like a different issue.
This is not going to be a cop-out to the previous question, actually. But where I nearly started my talk was, I think we have actually a much more profound effect on people in the world, but we don't understand the psychology behind it. We don't understand actually the effect we are having subconsciously. So, to the point where actually I'd argue you could start to change the way you research. So there's a lot of stuff about neuroscience now, which is actually starting to make a flutter into the actual effect of advertising on someone's brain. So not their rational response, but their actual emotional response. If we can start to understand that a little bit more, we can start to make better advertising. We make stuff that's not in a qualitative research group saying, yeah, it's great that you've told me the information about that car. You've got something that is genuinely actually making a difference on someone's brain. So I'd start by doing that. I think I'd probably change research methods, look into the kind of the neuroscience and the psychology behind it to understand how we make better advertising.
The man at the back here. There we go.
Oh, they've all started now. Easy a minute ago.
First one's got to go first.
So I want to ask Paddy a question.
Go for it, mate.
My question is, so how would you measure a good advert? Because, for example, in my opinion, I think a good advert is one that allows me to save money. That's the economic baseline of it. So from your point of view, how would you measure how good an advert is, and how could we go from that?
So thank you very much for that. That's mercifully simple in my mind. There's two ways to do it. First is if you want to save money, I would make an ad that you only have to use a limited number of times. I kind of throw back to the pie chart, right? If 4% of it's remembered favourably and 7% of it's remembered negatively and 89% just goes to the wall, the first thing that I would measure a good advert by is, did anyone remember it? Did anyone see it? And if someone saw it, then you're going to have to run less of it, so ultimately you'll save money. But to me, it's kind of as simple as that. It's It's not that we're making bad adverts, it's just we somehow perfected the art of making invisible ones. So they're not working. Like, that would be my sole measure. Even if they remember it negatively, I mean, we've seen a lot of examples tonight, like Protein World, that campaign did exactly what they wanted it to do. It was just an ad on the tube, and it went massive. So whether you agree with the morals behind it, which personally I don't particularly, I thought it was, you know, a bit of a storm in a teacup, but that did exactly what they wanted it to do. Paddy Power did an ad for the Oscar Pistorius trial saying, if he walks, you get your money back. But it did exactly what they wanted it to do. So I don't know whether it's advice or my opinion or God, at this point, who knows what it is, but first step would be just let someone remember it.
Can I have a go at that one?
Yeah, you have a go at that one,
I'm going to pick and choose. I'll take that one.
Yeah, I'll take that one. The others no.
I'm probably going to argue the opposite, and I think it's really, really complex, and that's part of the problem. First of all, I wouldn't measure. I hope I don't offend anyone. I wouldn't measure it by Millward Brown. That's what I definitely wouldn't do. But at the minute, when you talk about an advert being successful, how I think the industry's perceived, whether that is our fault or client's fault, is its honest economic success. And that becomes a bit of the barometer. And that's what I was trying to shift, in that it can't just be about economic success. I know the responsibility coming from an advertising agency, I'd argue, falls with the client. But if you start to measure an advert based on what it does wider than economics, so what does it do to society? How does it inform people of something? It's actually a really complex matrix of how you would measure whether an advertising is good. And it's trying to, how we get to a model that encapsulates everything, I don't know, but I think we need to try.
I'm going to chip in. I've got a quick question. I don't know whether this is allowed or not, but I'm going to do it. Right. So, Paddy, in particular, you said, we need to get noticed. And then, coincidentally, you used two good examples of things that got noticed, specifically because they were responsible. Right? So, in actual fact, when someone asks, how do you measure a good ad, you know, how responsible it is nowhere near your top sort of things, is it? About how you measure it. I assume. It's not in the top three.
Yeah.
Oh, nice responsible ad. Ooh. No one says that, right?
Yeah. Are we opening this
No,
up?
I'm asking, is responsibility anywhere near the top of criteria by which you judge the success or the quality of an ad?
Yeah, I mean, I've never really set them into a sort of a ranking order, right?
No.
I know that my personal moral kind of consumption is I look at the Paddy Power ad and I think, oh, come on, that's a bit, I find that grim, right? So I tend to have a negative connotation towards that. I think the problem is the race just starts so far back, right? If we're talking about kind of the argument that I've put forward, it's that once we get the advertising noticed, then we can do something about what it says. But at the moment, we're just kind of in a room on our own shouting and no one can hear it. So I don't think it's necessarily that responsibility falls down the ranking. It's just I don't think we've even got there yet, to be honest. You know, if
worry about that later.
That sounds like one of those really good problems. Everyone's talking about this, they don't like it or they like it too much. We don't get near that.
Right. Okay. James, do you want to?
No. No. No, I'll have a go. I think part of what it comes down to is whether it's actually the advertising you're judging. So you can have what on the surface might look like irresponsible ad. So something shifting cheap or average or punchy. If actually the end result is...
He's pointed at me when he said punchy.
Didn't mean to.
Referee.
We got the tridents.
The Diego Costa situation.
If actually the end result is a good thing, then does it matter what the advertising looks like at all? Because actually the best way to sell things often isn't the most responsible way. But if what you are selling is responsible in the end...
So if Protein World did make people look that way, who cares that the ads were offensive, right?
Exactly.
I'm joking.
If everyone's muscly.
Okay, who's next? Where are we? Here's a young lady right here.
So I hope Kitty's enjoying her glass of wine. I found her speech really compelling because she spoke about adults being decision makers and how they can kind of judge whether an advert is good or bad. What is your stance on people that cannot make those decisions yet, so i.e. children? Do you think advertisers should be more kind of careful towards children, talking about kind of health, safety, that kind of thing? Do advertisers have a responsibility more for the vulnerable?
Paddy?
Either.
I think it's your
Either
turn.
or.
Is it my turn? All right,
Yeah.
I'm up. I mean, it's a very difficult area, right? Because if you set it to the extreme, when you talk about very, very young kids, the argument is very obvious, right? If you talk about kids of sort of 3 or 4, you think, well, there's absolutely no way they should be exposed to commercial message before they're at an age that they can start to understand what's going on. It's not fair to them. They don't understand that that's the gap between the programming. They just understand that it's creating a sort of desire and a want, and they're not equipped to deal with that. I think where it starts to get really difficult, though, is that's an easy argument at 4. That's a relatively easy argument at 8. Still an all right argument at 12, but as soon as you hit 16, it becomes really difficult to start to police what people see. So I guess I haven't got any like specific answers in this bit, other than to say, I think when we talk about advertising to children, what we tend to do is have a very rightly rigorous kind of moral stance, but we don't necessarily confront the grey area that happens at the sort of top end, at the teenage end. And I think, you know, overall, I still have this kind of belief, and I was talking about it kind of in my talk, about put the faith in people. You know, trust people. The British public, despite all evidence to the contrary, are not thick. They get it, right? So I think we can, you know, I'm not condoning advertising to children, but I think when you take it up to the other end of the scale, I think we should have definitely a discussion on what that looks like, 'cause it's a tricky area.
James.
It's a really tricky area. And I think probably why the Advertising Association have such a big push towards it, because, as you say, you'd argue that children are more susceptible to advertising messages and taking it the wrong way. But then I can't stand up here and say that I actually know psychologically that's the case. I don't think we understand actually the effect adverts have on children enough, other than just your base reactions when watching a TV ad. You don't know how much of an influence it's actually having on their kind of mental structures, how their brain's development. So for me, it would come down to trying to understand actually more about the effects we do have.
Okay, everyone. I know there's lots more questions, but we're running over, so we're going to wrap things up and take things to the vote now. Genuinely, both guys have performed brilliantly well. I mean, like I say, it's very easy to regurgitate a script, but that is intense pressure that requires actual brains. So well done to both of them. Now, for the final time this evening, I ask you to take your democratic widgets in your hand. Think very carefully about what you've heard. If we can play a really loud heartbeat that gets louder and louder now. We don't have it. All right, disappointing, but okay. Place anything. Each of you vote now. Who will be the last one standing? However, how do we know how to do it? I'll tell you how. Press 1 for Paddy and 2 for James. Go.
Oh, lift music.
Jeopardy, love it.
Have you all voted?
Oh, straight round.
Yes.
Don't worry about that slide yet.
Oh, yes.
Ignore it. We shouldn't have got onto that yet.
Why can't we just get a...
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner. I will delay the announcement because the mid-price bottle of champagne is making its way now onto the stage. The stakes just quite literally couldn't be any higher. Here it comes. Thank you, thank you. It's been a wonderful evening, a thorough, rigorous, fascinating debate, and tonight's winner is Paddy. Well done, mate. Very well done. That's great. Enjoy it. Well done, James.
Thanks, Sam.
Well done. Thanks.
Can I get that down?
Yeah. Back like wet Paddy. Whoa! How do you feel? Is this for your mum? Is it for your grandmother? The people watching back home?
Actually, can I ask a favour? So my mum really wanted to be here today, but she had to have an operation on her eyes this morning, and she was properly gutted. She's fine. She insisted on getting the train home. She's a hard old bird. But could you do me a favour? She's going to watch this. This has all been recorded, and she'll watch it on YouTube. And she's never been on YouTube. So if on the count of 3 you could say, "Get well soon, Julie," that'd be amazing help. 1, 2, 3.
Get well soon, Judy.
That's amazing. That's
Hey, well done. Well, Paddy, a great winner and a lovely son. Isn't that... It's nice to see someone like that win. The good guy win. Oh, you're all lovely, obviously. Oh, I don't know where I'm going with this. Right, before I wrap things up, this is a secret vote. Don't worry. Thank God the results will not be made public. So feel free to be as mean as you want, although I'm sure you can all agree this has been one of the best evenings of the year. I don't want to influence you, but please vote. Did you know anything about the AA's work before tonight? Yes or no? If you didn't, then blimey, why'd you come? And the next question is, are we ready for the next question? Because I'm not waiting for a result on this. What's that noise? Is that the computer working out the results? Do you understand what the AA does and why? There you can see, 1 for totally, 2 a bit, 3 not really. God, that would be embarrassing. And this is the one. How do you rate last one standing? 1, poor. 9, excellent. I think it's been excellent. I do. So vote for that now. And that almost concludes our business. I would like to thank, on behalf of the Advertising Association, Google for hosting this wonderful event tonight in these wonderful surroundings. To our fantastic speakers, Paddy, James, Kitty and Hannah. Let's have another round of applause. And of course, all of you for coming and listening and being a wonderful audience and making democracy work. Thanks ever so much for listening to my nonsense. One bit of housekeeping. Do not nick the democratic widget. This is genuinely, I'm not being silly, I was told very strenuously to say, I mean, God knows what you'd do with it. Vote on issues day to day in the home, I don't know. But they're really expensive. They were developed and designed in-house here in the Google labs. Do not steal them. And on that lovely jolly note, I've also been asked to say, there will be some form of piss up in the bar afterwards. Thanks very much.